Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be going through my gaming history. I don't have an intro for this, so we're just going to get straight into it. Cool. The first gaming console I ever played was actually the Super Nintendo. Ever since the first few times that I ever played the console, something happened where I was just like astonished that this game console was made. You could play this on a screen, just like it had the very similar properties to how I fell in love with film. You could play it over and over and over again, but in a game's sense, you could play it how you wanted to play it. Not like a movie, you're watching a story unfold, but in the sense of games like Donkey Kong and Mario, you could play it and you could own other people, or they could beat you. And even though I was only a kid, I was like the worst cheap ass ever. Whenever I would verse my auntie on Street Fighter, I would literally do this, like the same move over and over again. I would duck and kick him in the legs. They couldn't do anything about it. I know that she let me win, but I like to think that I just won because I was that good. But I know I wasn't. It just blew my mind when I was a kid. I was like, I did that. I'm playing this thing with a controller in my hand. It just had this huge impact on me. So I got my hands on a friend's Nintendo, and I tried that out. And because the graphics, the differences in the graphics weren't all that huge, and I could kind of just deal with it, especially being that young, you know, you kind of are picky every now and then. But with, you know, going from the change from the Super Nintendo to the Nintendo, going backwards, it didn't bother me in the slightest. Actually, I found it more fun to play the Nintendo because you had games like with the gun and stuff, like when you would play Duck Hunt and so on and so forth. That just like a whole other level. I was just astonished that I could use a gun and like shoot ducks on a screen. I was just like fucking mind blown, man.
This is the NES that I had as a kid.
Now that is an iconic looking NES right there.
The toaster, right?
You see that on like iPhone covers, you see that as this is the Nintendo version or the skin to so many things. That's where it all came from.
But as the years progressed, you know, I played the Sega Mega Drive over in New Zealand. That was also something awesome, you know, a new experience playing Alex Kidd. And, you know, as I played more and more different consoles, I really didn't give a shit about what console was better. There were no console wars for me. If someone had a gaming console, I was gonna fucking play the shit out of it. And then the PlayStation came out. And I remember when that came out here, it was absurdly expensive. It was like $1,000. No joke. $1,000. Either that or it had like 2 controllers and like 2 memory cards and shit. It came with a bundle. But it was $1,000. More expensive than the top of the line gaming consoles that you get today with like insane graphics and shit. But I remember like it was yesterday, opening up that present for Christmas. I got it from my uncle. It was for me and my brother. And we opened it up and we now owned a gaming console of our own. And we got Tekken 2, Crash Bandicoot, Parappa the Rapper, Time Crisis. We got the gun with it and everything, Point Blank, all the demo discs, and Demo 1, the disc that originally came with the PlayStation. I loved the whole thing of demo discs. That's actually what sold me on wanting to buy new games, and having the ability to have multiple games on one disc. I could test out these games and definitively know if I wanted to buy them. If I saw them in the store, I would hound my mum, buy that for me. Not in that way, but like just, I wanted more of that. Hercules was another one. Jersey Devil, Looney Tunes. Fuck man, the list would go on forever. I mean, the amount of games that came out on that console as well was just phenomenal to me. Like, yeah, there was a lot of games on the previous consoles, but nowhere near as many like there was for the PlayStation. It just was a big wow factor for me. Now everybody knows that when the PlayStation came out, later on down the track, the Nintendo 64 became a huge competitor. Not only is this a fantastic console, but this brought games that we had played from the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo, and made them 3D.
You can zoom in, zoom out, change angles. Go anywhere you want to go, do anything you want to do. Here we go! This place is really sweet.
Kong Country to Donkey Kong 64, Super Mario Brothers to Super Mario 64. You went from a 2D flat image to a 365-degree open world where you could run around and do whatever the hell you wanted. Like, these gaming consoles knew how to get their shit right. Moving right along, the PlayStation 2 came out. I have like one word for that. Fahrenheit.
I stopped at a little diner to get something to eat. And after, it's just a black hole. I don't remember anything. Right up until I found myself in the toilets with a knife in my hand and...
Holy shit! Talk about a game to blow a kid's mind, thinking that you're playing like an animated movie. If you haven't played it, that's a highly recommended game. For those of you who don't know, it was actually created by the same French guy, David Cage, who created Heavy Rain. It's definitely like a beta version of what Heavy Rain was like sort of in development. It was like a tester for what people would think of Heavy Rain for the PlayStation 2. It was awesome. Another game that really got me hooked onto the PlayStation 2 was a really unknown game. Even today, it's still really unknown. It's a game called Obscure and Obscure 2: The Aftermath. Unfortunately, I don't have both of them. The second one is raising in price so quickly that it's actually hard to find a copy that stays at a steady price when I actually have money to buy that game. Now, anyone who has played Obscure will know what kind of an impact that game can have on you, especially if you've played the Resident Evil games. Very Resident Evil-esque, but like maddeningly, is that a word? Maddeningly depressing. Like, it's just super depressing, but in a kind of addictive way. It's kind of strange to say that, but anyone who's played it will know exactly what I mean. This game goes in directions that a lot of games don't have the balls to go in.
To survive, we had to kill our teachers. After that night, I did a lot of bad stuff and ended up in prison. But I served my time without protesting. I'm out now, and I just want to forget about Leafmore and everything that happened.
Especially in the second game. The second game is so brutal with your emotions because you've like attached yourself to these characters as you've played from the first one to the second one. And when you continue it on to the second one, you're like, fuck, that just happened.
Did you really need to snort that junk? They can mess around all they want, but not you. I know you found things hard since Leafmore, but so have I. It's one more reason not to give up.
I also did play the Xbox, and I've played the Xbox 360, and I haven't had the chance to play the Xbox One. I played the Xbox quite a fair bit when it came out, and it wasn't mine. I never actually owned one. A mate of mine had one, and I played Halo to multiplayer with him all the fucking time. But for some reason, I couldn't get into the Xbox. I tried, and I tried. And I couldn't get into it. I have access to an Xbox. I have one right there and a bunch of controllers, and I have Halo 2 right up there on the shelf. It's not like I can't play it. But here we are in the latest generation of consoles, the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One and the Xbox 360. But admittedly, the PlayStation was my favorite console for many years. And it's actually my favorite console today. I have lots of different consoles here. I have tons of games. The PlayStation 1 is still my favorite console. Now, some people might say that it's due to nostalgic purposes. Yes, there is some nostalgia there, but for me, it's the gameplay. You could sit on a game for hours and repeatedly play those fun games and not get bored of them.
The original PlayStation. This is the gaming console that I spent many, many hours with as a child. My dad bought the console for himself, and it got me really interested in gaming. Over time, I got to play games such as Tekken, Crash Bandicoot, Croc, Klonoa, and Spyro, and they were some of my favorite games.
It's the console I grew up with. It formed and manifested everything that I know today about gaming and how I perceive everything. It was legendary, revolutionary, and any way you look at it, a fantastic video game system.
The fun factor with Crash Bandicoot was so high that when each game came out, you didn't think that they could top the previous game, but they did. Playing games like Speed Freaks and Crusaders of Might and Magic and, you know, just all these really, really unknown games now. And speaking of expensive or being able to play multiple consoles without really that much worry of how hard they were to find, you could hire consoles back when I was younger. I could go down to the video store and I could be like, hey, you guys got any N64s or Super Nintendos or whatever console that they actually had available? Do you have them available? Can I hire them? Yeah, man, here you go, have that for 3 days, and here's a bunch of games on the wall for every console that's available, you know, that they're still making games for. Sweet!
Why Blockbuster? They have the latest and greatest in video games. With an adult Blockbuster membership, you can rent Game Boy Advance games like Super Mario Advance with an E rating. Blockbuster! Are you gaming up?
So right here is a relic of the past. This is the old Blockbuster video that I used to go to when I was a kid. That's where I discovered Nintendo 64. I would go here on Fridays with my allowance and hope to find a pre-played game really cheap and pick it up. I discovered Star Fox 64 in there. They had a TV set up with a controller. You could hold it and you could play the game right there, and that's where it all started for me.
Unfortunately, those kinds of privileges were abused by many people, and I'm sure it's a part of the reason that's led to the demise of those companies that now don't allow people to rent out consoles. It was just so good, so good. I remember when I was a kid and I would go over to a friend's house and we would have like Nintendo 64 parties. We would play Super Smash Brothers, and we played heaps of other games like Gauntlet Legends and GoldenEye and Super Mario Kart and whatever else there was out there. Jet Force Gemini was another big one that we would also play. They just don't make games like they used to. Like, the graphics in games are fantastic these days, but the gameplay is what mattered back in the day. The gameplay was essential. The graphics could look like a dude with a pancake face and a couple of blurry bits for eyeballs and maybe a line for his mouth. You wouldn't give a shit if the mechanics of these particular games were put to good use. That's what would matter. These days it seems like that is lacking dramatically. People just seem to be taking safe routes these days with whatever it is that makes them money, which I think is the most pathetic excuse to make a game ever. I just said ever, like an American. Ever. There we go. That's better. But anyway, I'm going to bring this video to an end. The question today is, what's your favorite gaming console from the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox going backwards? What's your favorite console? If you can pick one, what's your favorite game for that console? Just one game. Leave it in the comments section. Ask me some questions. I'll answer them in the next video. But as always, I hope you guys are all having a mad day, and until next time, peace.